two people sit down at the same restaurant on the same evening. One orders the caviar starter, pays $65, eats 12 grams of something that arrives on a small plate with a mother of pearl spoon, and spends the rest of the meal telling his date that he is not sure what the fuss is about. The other flies to a private tasting in a room that does not appear on any restaurant listing, pays $35,000 for a tin that was produced from a single fish that was alive for over a century. And does not describe the experience to anyone afterward because the people he would describe it to know already, and the people who don't know are not the audience for the description. Same food category, same black pearls on a spoon, completely different universes. Caviar is not a luxury food in the way that truffles or wagyu are a luxury food. It is a category of experience that begins at expensive and ends at something that has no public price, because the concept of a public price was never part of how it was designed to exist. So today I am breaking down the 7 levels of caviar, from the tin that anyone can order online to the eggs that were harvested once from a fish that will never produce them again. Let's get into it. Level 1, the entry point, is farmed salmon roe and supermarket caviar. This is where most people's first encounter with caviar happens, and where the word caviar is doing significantly more work than the product inside the tin justifies. Supermarket caviar, typically lumpfish roe or farmed salmon roe sold in small glass jars, runs 8 to 30 days, depending on the brand and the retailer. It is salty. It is dark. It pops when you bite it. It tastes like the ocean if the ocean were slightly disappointed in itself. It is not caviar in the way that the industry defines caviar, and the people who produce genuine caviar would prefer that the word not be used for it, but the word appears on the label, and the consumer buys the word along with the jar. The man who buys supermarket caviar has decided he wants to try caviar. He tries it. He puts it on a cracker. He offers some to his wife. She makes a face. He makes a face. They agree it is an acquired taste and return the jar to the refrigerator, where it will sit for 3 weeks before being discarded. He has not tried caviar. He has tried something that was sold in the same section of the store as caviar, and the distinction matters more than he currently understands. Level 2, farmed sturgeon caviar, is the real entry point. This is where genuine caviar begins and where the product first justifies the category it claims to occupy. Farmed Siberian sturgeon caviar and farmed Osetra from aquaculture operations in China, Italy, France, and Uruguay run $50 to $150 per 30 grams. This is real sturgeon caviar produced from real sturgeon raised in controlled farming environments and harvested according to methods that have been refined over the past 3 decades. As the wild caviar industry collapsed under the weight of overfishing, and the aquaculture industry stepped in to fill the gap it left. The flavor profile is clean, briny, and nutty, with a finish that lingers in a way that the supermarket version does not, because the supermarket version does not have a finish. It has an end. Finish and end are different things, and the difference between them is the difference between this level and the one below it. The A-man who tries genuine farmed caviar for the first time at a restaurant where it is served correctly, chilled on a mother of pearl spoon, with no accompaniment that would compete with the flavor, has a different experience from the cracker and jar experiment of level 1. He understands for the first time why people pay for this. He does not yet understand why people pay what people at the levels above him pay. That understanding requires more exposure than a single sitting. Level 3, premium farmed Osetra and Baerii. This is where the caviar conversation becomes serious, and where the differences between producers, farming methods, feed, water quality, and maturation time produce flavors that a trained palate can distinguish, and that an untrained palate finds genuinely surprising in their complexity. Premium farmed Osetra from operations like Caviari in France, Petrosian's farmed line, or Calvisius in Italy runs $150 to $400 per 30 grams. The eggs are larger. The color ranges from dark gray to golden, depending on the specific fish and its diet. The flavor has layers that reveal themselves sequentially, the initial brine giving way to a buttery mid-palate, and a finish that carries a nutty warmth and stays present for longer than seems reasonable for something so small. The man at this level has developed a preference. He knows which producer he prefers. He has an opinion about the difference between Osetra and Baerii, that he is prepared to defend with specific flavor descriptors. He has become the person at the dinner party who explains caviar to other people. His friends find this mildly irritating and genuinely useful in equal measure. Level 4, Wild Osetra and Wild Sevruga. This is where the word wild enters the conversation and changes everything. Wild caviar from Caspian sea sturgeon, where it is still legally produced under strict quota systems in Iran and Azerbaijan, runs $300 to $800 per 30 grams and represents a product that cannot be replicated by aquaculture, regardless of how sophisticated the farming operation becomes. The wild fish lives in the Caspian for decades. It feeds on a diet that no farm can reproduce. It develops a flavor profile that reflects its specific environment, its specific diet, and its specific life in a way that is as particular to its origin as a single malt whiskey is particular to its distillery and its cask. Iranian Osetra from the southern Caspian is considered by serious caviar professionals to be a different product from farmed Osetra, in the same way that a first growth Bordeaux is a different product from a well-made one regional wine. Both are wines. Both are caviar. The comparison ends there. The man who tastes wild Caspian Osetra for the first time alongside a premium farmed product does not need to be told the difference. The difference tells him. Level 5 Beluga Caviar. This is where the name alone carries cultural weight that exists independently of the product and where most people's image of caviar as a symbol of extreme wealth was formed. Beluga sturgeon produce the largest eggs of any commercially harvested sturgeon, and the beluga huso huso is the largest freshwater fish in the world, a creature that can live for over 100 years and reach a length of 6 meters before it produces the eggs that have made it the most valuable fish in the history of the food industry. Beluga caviar runs $400 to $500 per 30 grams, depending on origin, quality grade, and the specific producer. The eggs are the size of small peas. The color is pale gray to dark gray. The flavor is the most delicate of all the major caviar varieties, a clean oceanic brine with a creaminess that coats the palate in a way that the smaller eggs of Osetra and Sevruga do not. The texture is the thing, not the flavor. The way a beluga egg yields under the lightest pressure and releases its content in a single moment of complete dissolution is the experience that people who have had it consistently describe first when asked to explain why it costs what it costs. The man who eats beluga at this level is not eating a flavor. He is eating a texture that exists nowhere else in the food world. Level 6, Vintage and Aged Caviar. This is where caviar enters a category that most people do not know exists, and where the product moves from a food into something closer to a collector's item that happens to be edible. Aged caviar, specifically the Malasol method of light salting and extended maturation, produces a product that bears the same relationship to fresh caviar that an aged cheese bears to fresh milk. The transformation that happens during maturation is chemical, fungal, and deeply specific to the conditions in which it occurs. Certain producers in Iran and specialized houses in France and Belgium age caviar for periods ranging from 6 months to several years under controlled conditions, producing a product whose flavor complexity has no equivalent in fresh caviar, and that cannot be produced quickly, regardless of the quality of the base product. Vintage beluga aged to a specific standard runs $1,000 to $5,000 per 30 grams from the producers who have mastered the process and significantly less from the producers who have not, because the difference between properly aged caviar and improperly aged caviar is the difference between transformation and spoilage, and the gap between them is narrower than the price differential suggests. The man at this level does not eat caviar for the experience of caviar. He eats it for the experience of time. The years of controlled maturation are in the tin along with the eggs, and you taste them both. Level 7, the final level. Almas caviar and the eggs that cannot be replaced. Almas is the Farsi word for diamond. It is also the name given to the rarest commercially documented caviar in the world. The albino eggs of an albino beluga sturgeon harvested from the southern Caspian, a fish that is already among the rarest creatures in the food supply, and whose albino variant is so uncommon that documented harvests are measured not in seasons, but in individual fish encountered over decades of fishing. The color is white to pale gold. The flavor is described by the people who have tasted it as the complete expression of everything beluga caviar can be: the texture, the creaminess, the oceanic finish, all present simultaneously at an intensity that regular beluga approaches but does not reach. A tin of Almas caviar is packaged in a 24-carat gold tin by Petrosian and similar houses when it is available, which is not always. The price when available runs $10,000 to $35,000 per 100 grams, depending on the harvest and the grade. These figures are not stable because the supply is not stable. When a harvest occurs, the price is set by the availability of that specific harvest and the demand from the specific clientele who have already established relationships with the houses that handle it. The man who buys almas does not find it on a menu. He receives a call from a house he has been a client of for years, telling him that a tin is available and asking whether he would like to be considered. Level 1 is a word on a jar that the product inside does not earn. Level 2 is where genuine caviar begins and where the category first justifies its reputation. Levels 3 and 4 are where farming and terroir produce products that a serious palate can distinguish and value. Level 5 is where beluga's texture makes the price comprehensible to anyone who has experienced it. Level 6 is where time becomes an ingredient and aging transforms the product into something that fresh caviar cannot be, regardless of its quality. Level 7 is where rarity removes the product from the category of food and places it in the category of event.
See you in the next one.